She didn't scream when they forced her to step aside. She didn't argue when they told her, "That seat's not for people like you." She just stood there, passport in hand, boarding pass marked clearly 1A, as they deleted her from the flight manifest in real time. No explanation, no warning, just a calm black woman in the middle of a terminal, treated like a glitch the system couldn't explain. So it decided to erase her. And while everyone else walked past, pretending not to see, one quiet decision was already unraveling a billion-dollar empire from the inside. You want to know what she did next? You will. But ask yourself this first. Why was everyone so sure she didn't belong? What did they see, or refuse to see, that made them feel safe humiliating her in front of strangers? This isn't just a story about racism. It's about ego. About a machine so confident in its cruelty, it forgot to ask one terrifying question. What if she's not just a passenger? If this moment made your chest tighten, hit that subscribe. Like this video if you've ever seen someone be dismissed without reason. And comment below, what do you think happens next? And where in the world are you watching from? At 5:38 a.m., the fluorescent lights of Terminal A buzzed overhead like a tired sigh. The air smelled faintly of floor polish and burnt coffee, a scent that clung to early flights like static. Amira Collins stepped into the terminal with a quiet composure that no one seemed to notice. She walked with steady, deliberate steps, a canvas tote slung over her shoulder, scuffed shoes neatly tied, and a soft tan coat that had clearly weathered more than a few winters. Her ticket, printed and folded 3 times, sat tucked inside her passport, one she hadn't used in almost 9 years. She paused in front of the check-in kiosk marked Priority and Gold Class. Her ticket, issued through a loyalty reward accumulated during years of flight miles booked under someone else's name, qualified her for an automatic seat upgrade. She knew this. She read it twice. But she also knew what people saw. Behind the counter stood a young white woman, early 20s, lips glossed, brows laminated. The name on her tag read Savannah. She didn't smile when Amira approached. Didn't greet her either. Instead, her eyes skimmed Amira's face, then dipped briefly to the bag on her shoulder, a plain navy duffel, with a tear near the zipper. Savannah didn't reach for her scanner. She just tilted her head slightly and said, "Economy check-ins 2 aisles over." Amira blinked once. "I'm flying Priority today." She extended the ticket, careful not to sound defensive. Her voice was even, warm even, used to navigating tones that made other people feel safe. Savannah didn't look at the paper. Her eyes had already moved past her. "That section's for members only. You'll want to head over to General." She gestured to a growing line of families juggling overpacked suitcases and strollers. Amira didn't move. "I have the ticket." She unfolded it, revealing the gold star stamped beneath the flight number. Gate 42A, Seat 3C, upgraded for mileage redemption. Savannah exhaled, annoyed that the moment had stretched longer than expected. She finally leaned over, scanned the pass with a practiced flick, and the screen blinked validated. Still, her tone didn't shift. "Please step aside. Someone will assist you shortly." There was no one else waiting. Amira moved to the side, keeping her posture calm even as her heart ticked upward. She had worked too long, too hard, to let small humiliations find a permanent place in her chest. She breathed in, counted to 3, thought about the letter from the solicitor in Marseille, the one with the wax seal and the words executor of estate printed in French. She wasn't flying home for vacation. She was flying to claim a future she hadn't known was hers. Behind her, a man walked briskly toward the same counter. He wore a tracksuit and wireless headphones, one duffel bag slung behind his back. He smiled casually, lifted his phone. Savannah looked up and beamed. "Mr. Kessler, welcome back. Still traveling for the marathon?" She scanned his code without asking. "Would you like help with your bag?" Amira watched the interaction unfold in seconds. No ticket explanation. No detour to general check-in. No delay. The difference wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. Amira's assigned gate was still over an hour from boarding, but the tone had been set. She moved away from the counter and found an empty bench near a vending machine. As she sat down, a security officer walked by slowly, not stopping, just glancing at her longer than necessary. She didn't flinch. She opened her small notebook, the same one she used to track wages when she worked as a live-in caretaker in Marrakesh. Page after page of neat handwriting. Names, dates, dollar conversions, a history of sacrifice, handwritten in blue ink. 15 minutes passed. No one came to assist her. When she returned to the counter, Savannah had rotated out. A different agent stood in her place, an older man with a gray beard and a friendly nod. "Checking in, ma'am?" he asked. She handed the same ticket. He scanned. "You're good to go, MS. Collins. Seat 3C. That's a comfortable one. No issues. No, wait here." No glances at her coat. "Have a good flight," he added genuinely. Amira nodded and turned toward the escalators. But the unease hadn't left. She knew this morning wouldn't be about flying. It would be about navigating. Through perception. Through protocol. Through a system not built for women like her to move silently through its polished corridors. But that was fine. Silence, after all, was a space she had learned to weaponize. She stepped onto the escalator. As it rose, she caught her reflection in the mirrored siding. A calm face. A still posture. Beneath it, the weight of a story no one else had bothered to read yet. As Amira moved through the terminal, the buzz of boarding calls echoed overhead, punctuated by rolling luggage wheels and muffled conversations in a dozen languages. The path toward the departure gate led her past a string of high-end duty-free shops, their windows dressed in chrome and curated luxury, perfume bottles like small sculptures, watches in velvet nests, chocolates wrapped in gold foil. It wasn't her intention to stop, but a display of skincare products near the entrance of a sleek boutique caught her eye. Something her niece had once mentioned over a video call, a brand she couldn't afford at the time but had promised to try someday. With time still on her side, Amira stepped inside, carefully scanning the rows of polished shelves. She didn't touch anything yet. Her fingers hovered. Her gaze lingered. She took slow steps, making space for another customer to pass, offering a polite nod to the two sales associates standing near the counter. Neither greeted her. One, a tall woman with a blunt bob and badge that read Marla, stared for a beat too long. Amira offered a soft smile, the kind used to disarm unease. No response. She moved toward a tester bottle, lifted it gently, spritzed it once into the air. The scent bloomed quickly, citrus and musk. She closed her eyes for just a second, savoring the warmth it carried, until a sharp voice cut in. "Ma'am, the testers are not for personal use." The tone wasn't loud, but it sliced clean. Marla had crossed the room in seconds, posture squared, arms folded, eyes narrowed, not at the bottle, but at Amira herself. "Those are reserved for assisted trials," she added, her lip curled in practiced contempt. "You'll need an associate to help you." Amira blinked. "I didn't apply it," she said quietly. "I just tested the scent." She placed the bottle back exactly where it had been, aligning the label perfectly. Marla didn't budge. "It's store policy," she repeated, as if daring Amira to contradict her. Another customer, blonde, mid-30s, designer tote swinging from her elbow, stepped beside them and picked up a different tester without hesitation. Marla turned to her instantly. "Oh, that's one of our best sellers. It's lovely on fair tones. Would you like a sample pack?" Amira watched, saying nothing. She had learned long ago that dignity wasn't always in the reply. Sometimes it was in restraint. She turned and left the boutique with the same calm steps she had entered, though her pulse had quickened. As she walked, the scent still clung faintly to her coat, like an unwanted echo. Further down the concourse, she stopped near a seating area beside gate 42A. Her flight still hadn't begun boarding, so she sat near a window overlooking the tarmac, watching the workers in neon vest shuffle carts and containers under the rising sun. Her eyes moved to a mother calming her toddler, a teenager curled over a charging cable, a man whispering frantically into his phone. Normal people, normal morning. Yet even here, at this waiting place, the undercurrent of judgment hadn't settled. A man in a fitted polo shirt sat 2 rows across, glancing at her every few seconds. His gaze wasn't curious. It was measuring. Amira shifted her bag closer, unsure whether he assumed she was suspicious or simply out of place. When their eyes met briefly, he looked away, but not before adjusting the strap on his laptop case like a subtle claim to superiority. A cleaning cart rolled by. The custodial worker, a Latina woman no older than 25, gave Amira a smile. Amira nodded back, feeling that brief flicker of recognition between two people who knew what it meant to be invisible and visible at the same time. The moment passed, as all quiet kindness does. Minutes later, boarding for another flight was announced at a nearby gate. The same man who had been watching Amira stood, approached the counter, then doubled back, as if uncertain. He stopped near Amira's bench and, without introduction, asked, "Are you sure you're at the right gate?" His voice was light, falsely casual, but the implication weighed heavy. Amira looked up slowly. "Yes," she said, "I am." Her tone held no malice, only clarity. The man offered a brief, sheepish smile, more out of habit than apology, then turned and walked off. He didn't return. The final boarding group was being called at Gate 41. Amira rose to stretch her legs, still early for her own flight. As she passed a newsstand kiosk, she decided to buy a bottle of water. The young cashier barely glanced up as he scanned her item. But when she handed over a crisp $100 bill, her smallest denomination left after converting from euros, he hesitated. "Do you have anything smaller?" he asked. "I don't," Amira said, unbothered. "Sorry." He held the bill up to the light, then turned to another cashier. "Can you check the drawer? I'm not sure this one's real." Amira stayed quiet. She didn't argue. She didn't explain she had just exchanged the bills at an international currency booth 30 minutes earlier. She didn't flash credentials. She simply waited. The second cashier came, nodded, and broke the bill. Amira took her change and walked away with her water in hand. Her steps remained steady, her breathing unchanged, but inside, something had begun to churn. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't broken any rules. She had followed every expectation, every policy, every silent rule of quiet presence. And yet, at every corner, she was met not with suspicion, but with something colder. A version of disbelief that dressed itself in politeness. A tension that disguised itself as caution. An invisible sign across her back that read, "She doesn't belong here. Watch her. Delay her. Doubt her." And the worst part? None of them thought they were doing anything wrong. The pressure in Amira's chest hadn't settled since she returned the fallen bag to the drowsy gentleman in row 5, only to be met with an accusation that echoed louder than logic. She now sat rigidly, her seat belt cutting a line across her waist, her back refusing to melt into the cushion. Her eyes remained forward, not because she was watching the safety light, but because looking around meant acknowledging how quickly people decided who she was without a word. 15 minutes had passed since the incident, but no apology came, no correction was made. The flight crew simply moved on, brushing past like her humanity was a minor inconvenience they had decided not to prioritize. As the flight settled back into its rhythm, Amira tried to close her eyes, but the sour scent of cigarette residue clung heavily in the air, drifting from the jacket of the man seated beside her. He was in his 50s, sun-dried skin, unshaven jaw, and a cough that hadn't let up since takeoff. She had tried to ignore it, told herself to breathe through her mouth, to focus on the engine hum instead. But after nearly an hour, the tightness in her lungs had grown too pronounced. She shifted slightly, then leaned toward the aisle and pressed the call button. A soft chime blinked above her head. After 2 minutes, a flight attendant approached, different from the others, a tall woman with sleek hair pulled back, so tight it seemed to stretch the corners of her eyes. Her name tag read Bethany. "Yes?" she asked, tone brisk. Amira kept her voice even. "I'm sorry, would it be possible to move seats? I'm sensitive to smoke, and my seatmate's jacket has a strong odor. It's triggering my sinuses." Bethany's expression didn't soften. She gave a tight-lipped smile, the kind that told you no before her words did. "I understand," she replied. her voice not matching the phrase. "But discounted tickets don't qualify for seat changes mid-flight unless it's a medical emergency." Amira paused. "This is related to a medical condition," she said calmly. "I'm not asking for an upgrade, just another seat if available." Bethany shook her head. "We're fully booked today," she said without checking. "I can offer a wet towelette if that helps." Amira nodded once, knowing there was no point in pressing. Bethany returned moments later with the towelette in a plastic wrapper and placed it on Amira's tray with a neutral nod before walking away. The seat beside her shifted slightly as the man pulled his jacket tighter around his body and muttered under his breath, "Some people are just too sensitive." Amira didn't reply. She didn't look at him. She didn't ask for understanding. She had learned a long time ago that asserting comfort often came with a cost. The kind of cost that wasn't on the ticket. Her stomach, already unsettled, began to cramp faintly. It was a familiar pang, dull at first, then sharp, then spreading outward like a bruise inside her gut. She reached into her bag and retrieved a small pill case, flipped it open, and took 2 antacids. She needed warm water to help them dissolve properly. But after her earlier attempt to ask for a basic beverage, she knew the odds were stacked against kindness. Still, she pressed the call button again. This time, it took nearly 7 minutes for someone to respond. A different flight attendant approached, a young man, barely 25, with a clipped walk and eyes that scanned her like a form to be processed. "Can I help you?" he asked. Amira offered a tired but polite tone. "Could I get a cup of hot water? I need to take medication for my stomach." He glanced at her seat number, then at her boarding pass still folded neatly on her tray. "You're in Basic Plus, right?" She nodded. "I'm sorry," he said, already turning away. "Hot water's only included in business service. We can offer chilled bottled water, but hot's restricted due to premium meal coordination." He said it as if reading from a manual. "Even for medication?" she asked, not accusing, just clarifying. "That's the policy," he said, walking off before she could respond. A few rows ahead, a man in a button-down shirt and gold watch waved for the same request. Less than 30 seconds later, a steaming cup was delivered to his tray with a slice of lemon. Amira sat still, the pill dissolving slowly on her tongue, bitter and chalky. She washed it down with a sip of cold water from her bottle, swallowing past the discomfort that now had less to do with her stomach and more to do with what had become painfully clear. This wasn't about policy. This was about permission. Who was granted the right to request something without scrutiny? Who was believed when they said, "I don't feel well"? Who was offered relief without negotiation? Her body ached not because of altitude or air pressure, but because of the invisible weight of being forced to shrink in order to avoid confrontation. Even kindness, when offered selectively, became a weapon. The lights dimmed again as the flight transitioned into nighttime mode, and Amira reclined her seat slightly. Her fingers curled around the edges of the armrest, not for comfort, but for grounding. Her body asked for rest, but her mind refused, because in this cabin full of strangers and silent hierarchies, she had become someone people looked past until they needed someone to blame. The hours ticked forward in the cold, humming belly of the plane, and Amira could feel each one press into her spine like layers of sediment. Fatigue clung to her bones now, not from the length of the flight, but from the slow erosion of dignity that came with every look, every delay, every policy quoted like a weapon. Her stomach had settled somewhat, though not entirely, still aching from the chalky pills and the memory of being told she didn't qualify for warm water. Her eyes scanned the cabin, not for entertainment, but for patterns. And the pattern was clear. Comfort was distributed like privilege, silently, selectively, and often invisibly. As the second round of snack service began, Amira heard the familiar rattle of the cart coming from the rear galley. She looked up. Her row had been skipped last time, but this time she would ask directly. When the cart reached her, she waited for eye contact. It didn't come. The same attendant, Bethany, was serving again, her expression a calm mask as she leaned forward to offer options to the man across the aisle. "Would you like a cheese pack, pretzels, or the almond cookies?" she asked with a practiced tone. Amira sat patiently, waiting her turn, until the cart shifted away once more. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Could I get something as well?" Bethany turned with slow precision, the way one might turn toward a child who spoke out of turn. "Which one were you looking for?" she asked flatly. Amira nodded toward the small foil-wrapped almond cookies in the clear bin. "Just one of those." Bethany hesitated. "That's part of the elevated service tray," she said, a note of finality in her voice. "We're trying to reserve those for guests who haven't made demands during the flight." Amira blinked, unsure she heard correctly. "Demands?" she asked, no heat in her voice, only confusion. Bethany leaned in closer, lowered her voice just enough for it to feel intimate and cutting. "Look," she said, "we've had a lot of attitude this flight. That tray's for people who know how to behave." Amira froze, the insult sliding through her chest like ice. The words weren't loud, but they echoed louder than if they'd been shouted. She didn't argue. She didn't ask again. She leaned back slowly, her hands resting on her lap, one thumb tracing the edge of her seatbelt. The cart rolled on, and the cookies remained untouched, shining beneath the overhead lights like rewards she hadn't earned. A flight that began with her following every rule had now turned into a subtle, curated humiliation, enacted not by error, but by choice. This wasn't a system malfunction. It was a mirror, reflecting who they assumed she was, trouble in a quiet form. She didn't speak again for nearly an hour. The cabin had gone still, passengers lulled by the dim lights and the monotony of travel. Amira kept her gaze fixed on the screen embedded in the seat in front of her, though the movie played muted and unimportant. Her body was present. Her mind was pacing. Just as she reached into her bag to retrieve a scarf for warmth, a sudden jolt shook the cabin, a small bump of turbulence, enough to unsettle a few cups and spark scattered gasps. A child's voice cried out behind her, followed by hurried footsteps. Amira turned slightly to the aisle, just as a small girl, maybe 6 or 7, stumbled forward, colliding into her shoulder as she tried to regain balance. Reflexively, instinctively, Amira reached out to steady the girl, one hand grazing her arm, the other gently supporting her back. The girl righted herself almost instantly and blinked up at Amira with wide eyes, not afraid, just surprised. But then, like a snap of thunder, came the voice of her mother. "Get away from my daughter." The shout sliced through the aisle like a siren. A tall woman with platinum blonde hair charged forward from several rows back, clutching a purse in one hand and rage in the other. "Don't touch her. Are you insane?" Amira stepped back, stunned, both hands raised instinctively. "She tripped," she said quickly. "I was just helping her regain." But the woman had already turned to a flight attendant mid-row, her voice shrill and urgent. "She grabbed my child. I want her moved. I want her off this flight." The little girl tried to speak, her mouth half open, but her mother silenced her with a squeeze of the arm. The flight crew responded swiftly, not to investigate, not to ask witnesses, but to contain. Bethany reappeared, lips tight, and another attendant followed behind her, flanking Amira like she'd just triggered a silent alarm. "Ma'am," Bethany said, her voice clipped now, "we need you to return to your seat immediately." Amira blinked, still standing in the aisle. "I am in my seat." Bethany exchanged a look with the other attendant. "Not anymore. The captain has requested you be reseated for the remainder of the flight, toward the rear of the cabin." "On what grounds?" Amira asked, but the other attendant was already guiding her by the elbow. "Ma'am, please don't escalate," he said, his grip light but unmistakable. "We're just trying to keep things calm." Passengers whispered. Some stared. Others pretended to sleep. No one spoke in her defense. No one asked the child what happened. No one offered Amira even the courtesy of clarification. She was walked back slowly, row after row, past glances and lowered eyes, until she was placed in an empty seat near the lavatories, where the hum of the engines was loudest, and the air was thick with the scent of disinfectant. She sat without speaking, her body still upright, her hands folded tightly, her jaw clenched so hard she thought it might crack. The hum of the engines never stopped near the back of the aircraft, but Amira had grown used to drowning out with her own silence. She remained upright, hands neatly clasped in her lap, coat still folded over her knees like armor. The fluorescent light above her flickered once, then steadied. Around her, passengers came and went from the lavatories, some giving her cautious glances, others ignoring her completely. She had become furniture in a hallway, present but unseen, unless touched. Her stomach was now tight not from indigestion, but from the gnawing sense that she had crossed into a version of the world where her presence no longer belonged to her. It had been stripped, sectioned off, relocated. No apology, no reasoning, just relocation. The flight crew hadn't returned. The woman who accused her hadn't looked back. The child, Amira, had caught her gaze once before leaving. Looked like she wanted to speak, but didn't know how, or wasn't allowed to. When the aircraft finally touched down with a slight bounce and a stretch of rubber on runway concrete, a faint wave of relief swept through the cabin. People stirred, clicked open seatbelts, reached for coats. Amira remained still until the crowd surged forward. She waited as always until last, collecting her bag with the same quiet grace she had carried into the airport hours earlier. Once in the terminal, the fluorescent lighting seemed harsher than before. Maybe it was the contrast of false calm on the plane versus the industrial efficiency of ground operations. Amira walked calmly toward baggage services. She still had a carry-on tag for manual check. Her bag had been too large for the overhead bins in the rear section, something she was told with unnecessary volume by a flight crew member who referred to her as Sweetie just before removing it. That bag held documents, not many clothes. Just legal documents, notarized forms, and the one sealed envelope with her name printed in embossed serif. At the counter near the oversized luggage claim, Amira pulled out her credit card to pay for an additional checked bag she needed for the return flight, something she'd arranged preemptively, but now had to confirm in person. The young man behind the counter, wearing a lanyard full of enamel pins and a practiced smile, took the card without greeting. He typed quickly, then paused. His smile stayed, but his eyes changed. "Sorry, ma'am. It says your card's been declined." Amira blinked. "That's not possible," she said, not defensively, just factually. "This is a corporate secured card with no daily limit." The agent shrugged. "That's what the system says." He didn't offer a solution, didn't ask if she wanted to try again, just turned the card back toward her on the counter, like he was returning a mistake. Amira inhaled slowly, then asked, "May I try again?" The man sighed, punched in the numbers again, slower this time. His fingers hovered over the keypad, hesitated, then typed. "Still declined," he said. "No receipt, no error code, just a blank refusal." Amira watched the screen over the counter and saw nothing change, no processing notification, no code flash. She reached into her wallet and produced another card. Different bank, different name. She handed it over wordlessly. This time, the payment went through immediately. Approved. Processed. Receipt printed without delay. The man folded the slip and handed it over without a word. Amira took it, studying his face carefully. His smile had returned, faint, unbothered. "Have a nice day," he said. Not apology, not explanation, just automation. She didn't respond. She walked toward the side baggage carousel and waited. Beside her, two men in business attire chatted casually about layovers and golf scores. One of them leaned against the stainless steel railing, phone in hand, blazer slung over his shoulder. The other gestured loosely in Amira's direction and whispered something beneath the edge of laughter. The first man followed his gaze, then muttered a little louder than necessary. Some folks think buying a seat gives them the right to act like they own the airline. The other chuckled, or that they're entitled to special treatment just because they've got a sob story. Amira didn't turn, didn't flinch. She simply adjusted the strap on her shoulder bag and stared at the conveyor belt, waiting for the black zipper of her luggage to emerge. Moments later, a third figure approached. The name tag read Marcus K., followed by the words Terminal Supervisor. He was clean-shaven, tall, with a voice that had been tuned by repetition. "Excuse me," he said to the two men, nodding politely, then turned to Amira. "You were in 31G, correct?" She looked at him, unsure why he was asking. "Yes," she said. Marcus gave a small smile, just enough to appear cordial. "We had an issue with overhead reclassifications. You may need to confirm your check bag tag before exit. Just a quick scan." Amira furrowed her brow slightly. "My tag should still be attached. It was placed there by gate staff." Marcus nodded. "Right, but we had one tag error in your row. Better to be thorough, ma'am. Standard policy." It wasn't standard. She knew that. And he knew she knew that. But he smiled as if it were, with the easy charm of someone who'd made excuses 1,000 times and stopped caring if they were believed. The men beside her watched with mild amusement. Amira followed Marcus to a side booth where a handheld scanner was waiting. He took her bag, rotated it once, then slowly peeled off the original barcode label. "Strange," he muttered. The adhesive wasn't pressed fully down. Could have come loose. He printed another label and reapplied it, careful and precise. "There," he said. "Just making sure your things stay safe." She took the bag back, her fingers gripping the handle harder than necessary. Something about his tone made her skin crawl, not overtly cruel, but false in a way that mocked her intelligence without saying it aloud. The newly tagged bag in Amira's hand felt heavier than it had before the flight, not because of its physical weight, but because of what it now represented. 100 quiet signals that someone had chosen deliberately to make her day harder. She rolled it beside her as she headed to the connecting gate area for her next flight, a short domestic leg intended to bring her to the final city listed on her itinerary. It was meant to be routine, a quick 1-hour hop to complete a journey that had already felt like a marathon of humiliation. The departure lounge at Gate 29 was less polished than the previous terminals. Dimmer lighting, fewer amenities, worn seating with ripped armrests. But it was still filled with the same quiet hum of expectations being met or denied based on subtle signals. Clothes, posture, accent, tone. She took a seat near the corner where the charging outlets flickered intermittently and opened her small folder to review the documents one more time. The letters were still crisp, the ink permanent. The inheritance she was here to claim still waited. But that destination now felt farther than any miles measured by flight distance. When the boarding call began, Amira moved toward the gate as her name was called. A new boarding pass had been printed at the kiosk due to the updated bag tag, which had shuffled her into a different row, still economy, still middle of the aircraft, but a different seat than originally assigned. She walked down the jet bridge, eyes ahead, shoulders squared, and entered the cabin. As she approached her row, she noticed the aisle was still congested with passengers trying to lift luggage into overhead bins. She waited patiently, not moving forward, until a flight attendant with tired eyes and a name badge that read Jordan signaled toward her. "Keep it moving, ma'am," he said. "We're on a tight schedule." She held up her boarding pass. "I'm trying to get to row 18. There's no space yet." Jordan exhaled dramatically, then waved to another crew member, muttering something too low to catch. Once seated, Amira tucked her bag beneath the seat in front of her and wrapped her coat tightly around her. Her window was streaked from an incomplete cleaning, the view outside muddied by fingerprints and mist. She tried not to think about it, tried to imagine this would be the final leg, that it would pass uneventfully. But as the safety announcements played, her roommate, an athletic man in a sleeveless hoodie, plugged in his headphones and sprawled across the shared armrest without apology. Amira shifted slightly, giving space she shouldn't have had to give, and kept to herself. 30 minutes into the flight, Jordan returned pushing the food cart. The rows ahead were serve trays with pre-selected meal options, turkey wraps, vegetarian curry boxes, small fruit cups. When Jordan reached Amira's row, she leaned forward and asked politely, "Is the vegetarian option still available? I noted a non-meat preference when I booked." Jordan didn't check. He didn't pause. He just gave her a sideways glance and replied with a scoff, "Do you think people with basic fares get to pick and choose?" Amira blinked. "It's not a preference," she said softly. "It's dietary." Jordan raised a brow, leaned slightly closer, and said in a clipped tone, "Meanwhile, half this cabin's standing by for seats, and you're here negotiating curry?" He didn't wait for a response. He placed a chicken sandwich on her tray and moved on. The man beside her chuckled under his breath and adjusted his headphones. "Good luck with that," he mumbled, mostly to himself. Amira didn't answer. She looked down at the tray, the process bun, the slice of meat gleaming beneath plastic wrap, and pushed it gently aside. She wouldn't eat. She would wait. Again. As the cabin lights dimmed, Amira pulled her scarf over her shoulder, tilted her head against the cold plastic wall, and allowed herself to rest, not fully asleep, but somewhere in between. Time passed. She didn't know how much. The rhythmic roar of the engine blurred into something almost soothing. Then a soft digital sound broke through, the synthetic click of a camera shutter. It was brief but distinct. Her eyes opened. Across the aisle, two teenage boys were hunched over a phone. One held the device low, angled deliberately toward Amira's seat. The other stifled laughter, whispering something and jabbing a thumb at the screen. One word rose above the mutter. Classic. Amira straightened slowly, her spine pressing firm against the seat. The boys looked up, feigning innocence, tucking the phone away. She didn't speak, didn't ask what they had done. She didn't need to. She had seen enough of the pattern to know exactly how it played. They didn't see her as a person. They saw her as a moment, one they could capture, mock, discard. She glanced over their screen before it vanished, catching the blurry image of her sleeping form, mouth slightly parted, eyes closed, head tilted. It was harmless in context, but cruel in intent. Captioned, no doubt. Shared somewhere already. The man in the hoodie beside her smirked. This is why people pay extra, so they don't have to deal with this mess. His voice wasn't even directed at her. It was spoken toward the window, like a commentary he knew she'd overhear. A declaration designed to wound without confrontation. Amira didn't respond. She simply turned her face back toward the streaked window and let the hum of a plane continue pressing against her ears like white noise, masking the way her heart now beat in rhythms of defense rather than peace. The final descent jolted Amira slightly, not from turbulence, but from the abrupt return of gravity's full weight, as if the sky itself was finally done pretending to carry her. The cabin brightened with artificial light, waking the dozing, summoning movement with beeps and belts and clinks of trays being locked. She stayed still until the aisle cleared, waiting for the aisle passenger to yank his backpack down with a grunt and brush her shoulder without apology. Her feet touched solid ground 20 minutes later, through the jet bridge into another terminal, under another set of flickering lights and indifferent stares. She walked slowly, letting the crowd drift ahead until the queue at customs grew thin. At the final checkpoint, a man in uniform gestured for her to approach, fingers tight on the edge of a dull gray counter. "Declaration form?" he asked. She handed over. "Purpose of visit? Estate retrieval," Amira answered quietly. The officer raised a brow, clearly not expecting that reply. "You transporting any documents or high-value assets?" She nodded. "In my luggage, locked." He typed something, glanced at her passport, then pointed left. "Secondary screening. Door 3. She didn't flinch, didn't ask why. She turned and walked through the door, where another uniformed agent waited, a younger man with impatient hands. "Put the bag on the table, please." She did. He snapped on gloves. "Any sharp objects?" "No weapons." "No. Currency over $10,000? "No physical cash," she replied. He unzipped the bag without gentleness, flipping the lid back and exposing its neatly packed contents, a weathered file folder, a change of clothes, a notebook, and beneath those a sealed manila envelope with a red string looped tightly around its clasp. The agent paused, then picked it up. "What's this?" he asked. "Legal documents from my attorney in Marseille," she replied. "Inheritance paperwork." He glanced at her, clearly skeptical. "You got ID to back that up?" She nodded, reached into her inside coat pocket, and pulled out a thin folder stamped with a notary seal and a certified translation form. The agent took it, scanned the pages, and stopped when he reached the formal letterhead of Banque Internationale de Lyon. Beneath it, embossed in steel blue ink, was a figure. $6,200,000.0000 USD. Transfer of estate assets. Beneficiary, Amira E. Collins. Processing authorized. Signatures, 2. Stamped. Verified. The agent blinked, tone changing. You got power of attorney with this? She pointed to the next page in the folder. He found it. Read it. Then looked up with something closer to discomfort than authority. Just a moment. He stepped away, leaving the envelope open on the table, its contents partially visible beneath a translucent divider. A few agents looked over curiously, but said nothing. One of them, a woman in her 40s with a gold badge and clipped accent, whispered something into her headset, then stepped out of the room. Less than 2 minutes later, the door opened again, and a sharply dressed man in a charcoal suit stepped inside. He carried nothing but a leather folder, and his shoes tapped softly against the tile. He stopped mid-step as his eyes landed on Amira. His face changed instantly, from business neutral to something almost mortified. "MS. Collins," he said quickly, voice low but unmistakably urgent. "I'm so sorry. I didn't realize you'd arrived on this flight." Amira studied him for a beat. "And you are?" "Damien Teller, Regional Portfolio Liaison for Banque Internationale. I was assigned to meet you at arrivals with our legal team. We were told you'd be coming through Gate 3. He turned to the customs officer, who stood frozen. "She's on our priority list. Level 1 clearance. Everything in that envelope has already been filed with our central vault and flagged to bypass secondary review. These documents have the full backing of our International Risk Office." The officer nodded stiffly and stepped back. Damien turned to Amira. "We've prepared everything for transport and verification. Your legal counsel's already waiting downstairs. The Geneva office will wire confirmation by the time you arrive at the hotel." Amira gave a small nod, then turned to zip her bag, sliding the envelope gently back inside before securing the flap. Damien hesitated, then added more quietly, "And I owe you an apology. I was in the arrivals corridor earlier. I didn't recognize you. I should have." He didn't say it out loud, but the words hung there anyway. "I assumed you were someone else. Someone less important." Amira didn't react. She didn't forgive or correct. She simply stepped away from the inspection table and adjusted the strap on her bag, the weight of its contents now understood by everyone in the room. Damien walked 2 steps behind her as they exited through the restricted corridor. The doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss, and the hallway stretched long and empty ahead. From somewhere behind, Amira could hear one of the officers muttering into a radio, voice low and urgent. "Notify floor supervisor. Collins ID verified. She's flagged under code silver." As they reached the end of the hall, the waiting lounge came into view, polished floors, velvet chairs, and 3 individuals in suits rising to their feet the moment she appeared. 2 of them carried tablets. The third extended a hand with the kind of practiced deference reserved only for those with leverage no one could deny. The polished waiting lounge shimmered beneath recessed lighting, the walls dressed in textured cream and dark with trim, the kind of understated luxury that spoke quietly but confidently to those who understood its cost. Amira stepped into that room without slowing, without glancing at the 3 men who rose at once to acknowledge her presence. Her steps were not louder than they'd been before, but they sounded different now, amplified not by heels or echoes, but by the silence of people finally realizing they had misjudged her. Damien Teller followed behind her with the respectful urgency of a man who knew exactly how close he had come to catastrophic error. The legal representative from Geneva nodded solemnly as she entered, offering a folder already opened to the summary page. "Transfer will be finalized by 8 a.m. Local," he said. "Property title and securities are in motion. All that's left is your signature." Amira didn't sit yet. She scanned the page, pen in hand, but her mind was already moving past the paperwork. This was no longer just about securing what was hers. This was about reclaiming what had been stolen in 1,000 micro-moments since she entered the terminal. Her voice, her presence, her right to exist without defense. Behind her, a noise broke through the soft ambience of the room, a series of quick steps and a sharp, breathless voice calling, "Excuse me, wait." She turned slowly. A man stood at the edge of the room, just past the frosted barrier. He was in his early 30s, pale-faced, eyes wide with recognition that bordered on disbelief. "Ms. Collins?" he asked, his voice uncertain. She nodded once, measured. The man stepped forward, eyes already glossing. "You don't remember me," he said quickly, "but you took care of my father. In Lyon, 3 years ago. Pierre Lambert." Her brow softened, just slightly. The name stirred something faint, but real. "He was in a clinic after surgery," the man continued. "Wouldn't eat, wouldn't speak. They said he might never recover from a depression. And then you walked in." He laughed softly, almost bitterly, like the memory embarrassed him. "You made him listen to jazz again. You taught him to play dominoes. I watched you bring him back to life 1 hour at a time. You didn't ask for praise. You didn't even say your last name. You just showed up." Amira gave a quiet nod, unsure how to respond to the sincerity suddenly unfurling in front of her like a truth no one else in the airport had bothered to look for. The man looked over his shoulder, then back at her. "I saw what they did today," he said, voice cracking slightly. "I saw every second of it, from the counter to the gate, and not one person stopped it." His eyes sharpened, not at her, but at the men in suits behind her who were now standing awkwardly still. "No one had the right to make you feel less than what you are, least of all in a place like this." The room held stillness, like a held breath. Then the man stepped back, gave her a small, respectful bow, and left without another word. As the doors eased shut behind him, a soft knock sounded from the far entrance of the lounge. A woman in navy stepped forward first, clearing her throat. "Captain requests a word," she said. Amira raised an eyebrow. "Now." The woman nodded. He insisted. A moment later, the captain himself stepped inside. Tall, clean-shaven, silver streaks at his temple, epaulets crisp on his shoulders. His nameplate read J. Whitaker, and his eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen turbulence far beyond the skies. He didn't walk with pomp. He walked with purpose. "Ms. Collins," he said, stopping a respectful distance away. "I'm not here on behalf of the airline. I'm here because I watched the report come across my desk, and I recognized the name." She tilted her head slightly, unsure where this was going. "My mother was at Val d'Ivoire," he said. "Same clinic. She wasn't a patient. She volunteered there. Said the only reason she stayed sane those months was because of a night shift nurse who used to hum Nina Simone in the hallway." He paused, smiling faintly. "That was you, wasn't it?" Amira didn't answer. She didn't need to. "I'm sorry," he said, no longer smiling. "For what happened on that flight. For the silence that let it happen. For the training that missed what matters. My crew, we owe you something we can't return. But I can start with a seat." Amira blinked. "A seat?" "There's a priority spot open on Flight 219, he said. "First row. No transfers. No conditions. I'll personally see you there." The silence stretched before her answer came. "You don't owe me a seat," she said. "You owe me accountability." The captain nodded. "Then consider this the first installment." He gestured gently toward the hallway. She looked down at the folder one last time, closed it, and handed it to Damien. "Send it to the hotel." Then she picked up her bag, still the same scuffed leather, still the torn zipper, and followed the captain out of the lounge. Outside, the air smelled different. Not fresher, but sharper. Like metal cooling after a fire. Passengers lined the boarding area for Flight 219, unaware of what had shifted behind them. Whispers were beginning to ripple. The name Collins had made its way into more than one terminal headset. As Amira approached the gate, the agent on duty stood a little straighter, her eyes widened slightly, and she moved aside without scanning a pass. "We've been informed," she said simply. "Right this way." And then, from one of the back rows, a voice rose, uncertain at first, then clearer as it stood out from the sea of murmur. "That's her," a woman said. "The one they treated like a threat." A man stood up next to her, eyes locked on Amira. She didn't ask for attention. They pushed her to the back like she didn't matter. Another added quietly, "Now they're escorting her like royalty." Wild how fast things turn when the truth shows up in a suit. Amira didn't stop walking. She didn't wave. She didn't look back. She only moved forward, toward the row that had once been out of reach, toward the seat with no name but hers. The plane lifted with quiet grace, engine steady and unapologetic as it carved through clouds that didn't care where she had come from or what she had endured to sit in that seat. Amira rested her head gently against the plush leather headrest of the first-row cabin, eyes closed, not in sleep, but in momentary reprieve. Around her, no one spoke, no one whispered, no one dared perform the condescension that had followed her from the very first gate. The flight crew moved with calm efficiency, each glance toward her now laced with something unfamiliar to them, but achingly overdue for her: respect. Her coat rested across her knees, her bag tucked neatly at her feet. No more relocation, no more glances, no more justifications. The silence in the cabin wasn't absence of sound. It was the loud echo of restraint finally being lifted. Somewhere between takeoff and cruising altitude, justice had begun to breathe. And several floors below the terminal they'd just departed, in a steel-paneled administrative office with no windows, a printer blinked to life. The first termination notice came through with sharp precision, header bold, language clear. Immediate administrative leave pending internal review violation of Conduct Clause 7C. Discrimination based on appearance, attire, or ethnic profile. The recipient was Craig Delson, the gate agent who had flagged Amira's boarding pass and rerouted her check-in without basis. He was in the middle of briefing another employee when the email hit his tablet. He blinked twice, opened the document, and read each line slowly, the color draining from his face not because he didn't expect it, but because deep down he had hoped the cameras weren't angled high enough to catch everything. Attached was a time-stamped video from security footage, grainy but damning, showing Craig motioning her aside, ignoring her seat class, and smirking at a coworker right after she walked away. 15 minutes later, Bethany Laurel, the flight attendant who had denied Amira warm water, cookies, and basic courtesy, received her own notification. She was standing in the employee break corridor, scrolling through her phone with a smoothie in one hand when her inbox lit up. Her first reaction was annoyance, then confusion, then disbelief. She tapped into the attachment, reading the words 3 times before it sank in. Suspension effective immediately. Pending completion of formal hearing under Section 12A, passenger harassment and intentional dismissal of medical needs. A second document was included, an export from the galley log, showing her decision not to log Amira's service requests, paired with a submitted witness statement from a passenger in row 5C. Her smoothie slipped from her grip, splashing silently onto the tile floor. She didn't pick it up. Jordan Sipes was the third, the attendant from the connecting flight, the one who had leaned in and said she didn't deserve choice, who had served her a meat sandwich knowing she had requested otherwise. His message was simpler, blunter, perhaps because it didn't need to say much. The footage had audio, and his tone, the exact phrasing, the sneer, the sarcasm, had already been reviewed by compliance. His union rep had been copied on the thread. His ID badge was revoked before he even reached the elevator lobby. Meanwhile, in the terminal operations office, a tall man with graying temples and a clipboard pressed to his chest stepped into the operations hub and addressed the shift supervisor. "Head office just sent the directive," he said. "Every gate with video logs tied to Flight 1342 and Flight 219 needs to isolate footage for HR. All feeds, all audio, no gaps." The supervisor, a woman named Lena, didn't respond at first. She just nodded slowly, the gravity of the command not lost on her. She turned to her technician and spoke clearly. "Pull everything from gates 19 through 43. Cross-reference with TSA timestamp logs and passenger queue overlays. Tag all files with Collins inquiry and route straight to legal review." The technician glanced up. "That includes staff comms." She nodded. "Especially staff comms." Across the airport's internal server, archived audio logs began uploading to a secure drive. Snippets of conversations between agents about problem passengers, clipped remarks about people always pushing for upgrades, casual jokes shared on private frequency lines now being scrubbed, timestamped, and forwarded to HR like confessions no one realized they had already made. One audio clip stood out, a laughing voice from the ramp staff joking, "I bet she thought that tote bag made her look rich." The laughter that followed was sharp. Now it was evidence. By early evening, a formal statement had been drafted. It wasn't yet public, but it had been circulated internally to leadership teams. Haven Air does not tolerate discriminatory behavior at any level of its operation. We are conducting an independent investigation in coordination with regulatory compliance boards and legal oversight. All staff found complicit in passenger mistreatment will be held accountable according to both our internal code of ethics and external aviation statutes. The message was short, but its delivery was surgical. In the HR holding room, the director of compliance reviewed each case file, her finger tapping a pen against the desk as names were added to a list longer than she'd expected. The behavior wasn't isolated. It wasn't limited to one gate, one agent, one flight. It was systemic, and Amira Collins had broken it open by doing nothing more than refusing to vanish. On the aircraft, Amira sipped from the glass of still water offered without question, watching the sky fold softly against the window like fabric. She hadn't demanded anything. She hadn't raised her voice, hadn't posted a video, hadn't held a press conference. She had just stood still long enough for the system to trip over its own reflection. The final hour of flight unfolded like a slow exhale, the plane gliding above the clouds with steady resolve as if the atmosphere itself was learning to breathe differently around her. Amira sat quietly in her seat, hands resting gently atop the closed folder on her lap, eyes fixed on the horizon just beyond the oval window, where the first brush of sunrise kissed the curvature of the earth. The soft golden hue spilled into the cabin, casting halos across the seats, touching passengers who had no idea they were witnessing the last moments of a story they'd unknowingly taken part in. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The silence around her was no longer laced with dismissal or avoidance. It had shifted into a respectful stillness, as if the air had collectively chosen to listen for once. The flight attendants moved differently now. No false cheer, no passive glances, just measured care. One paused beside her seat with a napkin and a fresh cup of hot water. No question, no qualifiers, just placed it gently on her tray and stepped away. 20 minutes before landing, the seatbelt sign blinked on with its familiar chime. Passengers stirred, stretching, murmuring, preparing to re-enter a world that would move faster than they remembered. In the row behind Amira, a man with silver temples and a navy blazer leaned slightly forward, speaking not loudly, but with enough clarity that the surrounding rows heard him. "You know," he said, pausing to glance around, "this is exactly why we have to stop judging people based on the shoes they wear or the coat they carry." His eyes weren't on Amira, but the message was unmistakably hers. Some of us spend so much time pretending we know who belongs where, we forget how easily we could be wrong. A beat of silence followed, long enough to settle in, short enough to snap. And then, quietly at first, a passenger a few rows up began to clap. Just once, then twice, then more followed. Not thunderous, not performative, just a soft, growing wave of recognition rippling through the cabin like a breath held too long finally being released. Amira didn't rise, didn't smile. She bowed her head slightly, a gesture not of pride, but of grounded dignity, the kind that says, "I didn't need your validation, but I accept your awakening." She didn't cry. She didn't collapse. She remained composed because this moment, like everyone before it, was not about applause. It was about truth finally being heard without her having to shout. The plane began its descent, and the skyline came into view beneath the clouds, a city still waking, unaware that today, justice had flown in under the radar. When the wheels touched the tarmac, there was no fanfare, no grand announcement. Just a quiet, clean landing. The aircraft taxied toward the terminal, rows of ground crew awaiting with fluorescent vests and clipboards, unaware that one of their own had history tangled with the woman seated in row 1A. As the jet bridge connected, passengers began to stand. Luggage lifted, overhead bins clicked, and the usual chaos resumed. But no one pushed ahead of Amira this time. No one bumped her shoulder or reached across her tray without asking. They waited, not because she asked them to, but because something had shifted. She stood, adjusted the strap on her coat, and took her time exiting the aircraft. At the terminal entrance, a line of staff formed their usual processing queue, scanning passes, greeting passengers. But just off to the side stood a man in a clean-pressed operations jacket, hands clasped in front of him, posture perfectly still. He was older now, grayer around the beard, but the warmth in his eyes hadn't changed. Amira paused when she saw him. "Luis?" she asked. He smiled gently. "Still remember me, huh?" She nodded once. Years ago, he had been a part-time janitor at a clinic in Marseille, struggling to send money home while working double shifts. She had loaned him funds to cover his mother's surgery in Puerto Rico, with no contract, no guarantee, just a promise that kindness would echo. He stepped forward, offered his hand, then changed his mind and bowed his head slightly instead. "Back then, you cleaned hospital trays with your own gloves," he said. "Treated my mama like she was royalty. You didn't need a name badge to lead. Today, the world finally caught up to you." His eyes glistened, but his voice held steady. "You cleared other people's pain like dust off a floor. And now, justice just swept the runway for you." Behind him, the terminal doors opened automatically, sunlight spilling into the hallway. Amira stepped through without hesitation, her luggage in tow, her coat catching the breeze as if claiming its own space now. Cameras didn't flash. Reporters didn't swarm. But systems shifted. Names were reevaluated. Procedures rewritten. Somewhere upstairs, someone was scheduling diversity audits. Somewhere across the country, training programs were being revised. Not because Amira demanded it, but because her silence had made louder noise than rage ever could. And though she never asked for headlines, her story would quietly ripple through boardrooms, break rooms, and policy books, not as a tale of revenge or spectacle, but as a lesson. That dignity denied becomes the loudest kind of truth when it finally stands still long enough to be seen. Amira didn't look back, because the world behind her had already begun changing in her wake. If this story struck a chord with you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more narratives that challenge assumptions and expose deeper truths. Which moment stayed with you the most? Was there a part that made you pause or rethink something? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let us know where in the world you're watching from. Your voice adds power to the story.